listening to the MyCo Geeky Podcast.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the MyCo Geeky Podcast, a podcast that goes deep so you can level up your at-home mushroom cultivation game. I'm your host, Myco Geeky, and tonight, Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, a couple other time zones in between. We're doing, again, Myco Monday nights. Here we are. So tonight, I got two very interesting guests. We're going to do a quick check-in here in a minute with Lauren Feringa of Hippie and 𝐸𝐸. She was on earlier talking about her foundation, talking about her experiences in the military with PTSD, with trying to overcome the deficit of dealing with the VA and figuring out how to heal herself. And so she had mentioned in that episode that she was going to be going to Washington, D.C. And so she went, she, made it happen. She put in some work. She rolled up her sleeves. And so we're going to have her on in a minute to talk about how that trip went and what she actually did and where we're at as far as all that stuff goes. So momentarily we'll have her on. But first, I want to give a little shout out to my Discord mods. You guys are great. We're going to have you guys on sooner, hopefully sooner than later. I think the summertime has thrown this one off a little bit. A lot of the mods out and about doing different things. And I have several mods who live in the European Union. And so, it's a little bit challenging. So, but we're going to have you guys on soon. I know it. I can feel it. Also want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. Kind of plateauing on the Patreon support. It's okay. I'm not mad. I understand you guys got summer money. You got to spend your money doing fun stuff in the summer. I would like to be doing the same thing. I get it. So, I really appreciate, I have a steady supply of, diehard people who are supporting me on Patreon, and you guys are really keeping it going for me. So I really appreciate you. But real quick, patreon.com/MycoGeeky. Please consider supporting the show. If you watch regularly, semi-regularly, if you'd be sad if the show went away, please consider supporting me. It will keep the ball rolling, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so yeah, besides the little check-in we're going to do here in a minute, I had somebody reach out to me not too long ago, and he ran a podcast based out of Oregon, and went on the show, had a good talk. It was really fun. He's real easy to talk to, a great host, asks a lot of good questions, and that is Higher Peaks of Oregon Rooted, a great podcast where we're going to have him on and get to know him, find out what he's all about. Yes, he loves mushrooms. Don't worry, guys. Yes, he loves cannabis. I know a lot of my viewers love both, so we're going to get to know him in just a little bit. But first, let's have on to the show Lauren Feringa of Hippie and 𝐸𝐸 Foundation. All right, welcome to the show, Lauren Feringa. What's up?
Hey, I'm so happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. Well, I mean, so recently you took a little jaunt over to Washington D.C. That was a pretty long plane flight, but for a very good reason. And I said, hey, I gotta reach out to her, see if she wants to come on and talk about how that trip went. So, man, just lay it on us. Tell us all the juicy details.
All right. So, I'm a part of a coalition called the Veterans Mental Health Leadership Coalition. We are made up of over 40 nonprofit organizations that help veterans or are led by veterans that are all actively working together across the nation in our own respective states and federally to bring in access to the American people. I'm going to pause really fast. Hold on. Sorry. I love you, Rio. My son said I love you, and I had to say it back.
Oh, no worries. I get it. That's
but
mom duty. That's mom duty right there. You have to.
It is. He said it, and I was sitting here
Yeah.
like, oh shit, I gotta respond.
Yeah.
But so we are all actively working towards access to bring people to, or bring medicine, plant medicine, to, and psychedelics to the American people. One of the biggest pushes that we're doing collectively is the Breakthrough Therapies Act, which is a bipartisan bill written by both Cory Booker and Rand Paul, from one side of the aisle literally to the other, two very extreme sections like coming together, on a bill to change the scheduling system. So we are
preach.
So like we're all doing like legalization, decrim, or trying to get funding and whatnot in different states, all on our own separately, and working in different coalitions and groups. But together we all know that we got to go to the heart of the beast. We have to go and go after the space that's literally criminalizing all of this, which is the scheduling system. So I mean, in Schedule 1, you have the majority of all the things that we like. Basically, so many entheogens. We still have cannabis, psilocybin, MDMA. But the thing is, MDMA and psilocybin were given a breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA. And psilocybin specifically was stated as being safe for human consumption, meaning it can't kill you. And it literally doesn't cause any long-lasting, effects to your body that are bad or toxic. So it's literally like one of the safest things out there. That is also a mental health medication. Can't overdose on it. You can just have a really bad trip, which then you need to integrate afterwards, like the rest of us. But so those things are in Schedule 1, and then over in Schedule 2, we have shit like PCP. So it doesn't make sense, but we all know why these things are the way they are. So what we're doing is they identified what the problem was, which is there's this little piece, the DEA right there, that gets to say no. So despite the fact that MDMA and psilocybin have been given these breakthrough therapy statuses, which means they're supposed to be able to be pushed over into Schedule 2, they're not. Right. Why? And the why is because the DEA gets to stand there in line. But the thing is, the DEA's job is to do that, right? So they're doing their job that the system, has created them to do. And to be able to say, yes, it can go over there would mean that they have to personally retroact and, I don't know, deal with their own shit. Right. But so it's not their place to change law. So our point is in the bill to remove the stronghold that basically the DEA has to say no, and will allow any breakthrough therapy designated substance to be moved over into Schedule 2. So the things that we currently have are MDMA and psilocybin, and we already have the research and the approval by the FDA to move it over. Right. So what we're doing is removing that barrier with the DEA and taking also that off their shoulders, because as far as they're concerned in the world that we live in and the systems that we created, like they're doing their job and they can't do anything outside of that until we write laws for it. So we did it. And the great thing is this bill was also reviewed by the DEA, and the DEA made their comment, and they requested only one thing to be added into the bill, which was if there's a way for stuff to come out of the Schedule 1, that there's a way for it to go back in if it's deemed, like people are dying and there's like, public health crisis, which we know isn't going to happen with mushrooms because they're literally everywhere already. Right. So we already know that that's not going to happen. So their request was that we add a little clause in there. And after that, we got the DEA's approval on our bill.
That's awesome.
So the DEA is in supportive of
it. So it boggles my mind that the scheduling system isn't like an ever evolving and always reassessing process.
Exactly.
I mean, especially given that one of the criteria is whether there's a medicinal benefit or not, you know, in the higher schedulings, that stuff changes. I mean, that evolves. So things should be able to be constantly moving up and down depending upon how they are being used and how science is working. I mean, the scheduling just points, it shows us the power in that policy.
It
That
does.
policy. And I mean, way back during the Nixon years,
Yep.
they said, oh man, if we just get a couple of these things on there, we got, you know, we can go after the hippies, we can go after the blacks, and we're good.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
Absolutely. They did. And it's insane that like looking back and working and doing all this, it's so weird to me that we are all just sitting here listening to a bunch, like as a medic, I took an oath and I swore, like, if something is wrong, even in the military, we're allowed to say, no, I won't do that.
Right.
Or I'm going to do it this way anyways. I've watched so many people, especially medics, go out of their way just to save lives and like completely ignore rules to save lives. So
Right.
that weren't benefiting human life. So as a medic, to me, there's no way in hell, as a medically trained person that literally cares about human life and was trained by the government, for me to stand by anymore. Like, and I
Right.
think that's how, like, military people in general, we feel like we actually have this chance. So what we did in DC was we went there for the bill. We spoke to, I don't know, close to almost like 100 different congressional staff offices across
Oh, wow.
multiple teams.
Okay.
We went in, we had meetings. We had a lobby firm that set up all of our meetings for us. We just hopped from meeting to meeting with our little crew, which we had like lawyers, a bunch of veterans, spouses, therapists, researchers, all these different professionals and veteran focused people, because we know that it's not about just getting access for veterans, even though like that's how it seems. I think a lot of the time it's not. We are using our service, our grief, what America made us do, and we're coming back and we're cashing in. We're saying,
dude, you stated that exactly the right way. I mean, you guys have the cachet to do it more. Like, who am I, a random dude? But you guys get to go, okay, sorry guys,
yeah,
you got to listen to me now. You
Yeah,
got to listen to me now.
exactly. And that's like what we did. You know, we just tell our stories. You know, we basically, what I just said to you is a lot of what we say to them. I talk about safety specifically because I was a breastfeeder that was microdosing and using mushrooms. And so I think I was me and there was Dr. Avril. She is a VA like researching therapist. She's amazing, and she was there also with her baby. And I love that there were moms there, and we're leading the charge, because like to me, I'm like, we know how to talk about safety, and we know how to
Right.
make people feel safe, because like that's literally like our bodies are designed to do that and to calm people. So it was cool to see just like, moms leading and being able to speak about the safety of this stuff, because that's the reality. It is that safe. So we just went around talking, trying to convince people to join on board and support this bill. But the cool thing about this bill is, we want bipartisan support. So we are trying to, I guess what they're trying to do is ensure that we have bipartisan support on this bill completely. And right now, as it stands, I think we got like maybe like 10 more people to absolutely sign as sponsors on the bill, or whatever it is that they do, because the House is also, it's bicameral, so it is in both the House and the Senate.
Right.
And so we're just trying to make sure everyone has to come to the table. You all sent us, all of Congress, even if you weren't there before, y'all are the reason. We need you all to come to the table right now and fix this. And it'll fix it for the American people. It's not just us at all. This will literally change the scheduling system for all of us.
Fingers crossed.
So,
yes.
Fingers crossed. I mean, it seems pretty positive. Did you see the military and veteran cannabis and psychedelic like addition that they're trying to put into the NDA?
I know.
Okay, well, that looks like it's going to be, being pushed through. So like they are all, it's more like there's all these different bills that we're all trying to push right now, or requests in the NDA, which like the National Defense Authorization. And it's just like which one they all want to choose, because it's happening no matter what. And
Oh yeah, it's happening.
Coming from every side, and every political background, every cultural background, because that's what you get when you get veterans, is you get all of us. Next,
it's kind of like, sorry, I'm going to just throw out a metaphor. It's like when you're about to paint your house and you got to pry open that lid, right, with the screwdriver. And you put it in there and it cranks down and it's not off. Then you got to turn it a little bit and crank it and crank it and crank it. And eventually that lid pops off. So that's what's happening right now, is everybody's trying to pry a little bit. And eventually we're going to do some painting. We're going to.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
We are going to paint America with mycelium.
Cannot wait.
I'm excited. It is really amazing to watch. It's amazing to get to be a part of. Next, I'm going to get to bring Indigenous veterans into the conversation. Can't say who we're talking to next, but we're talking to some other people. And I get to we're lifting everybody up and giving everyone their right voice. Because they brought everybody to the table.
Yeah.
So, veterans do it right. We're so awesome. But it's just we're really tactical and we know what works. And we're trying to do whoever fits in the right puzzle piece to get this done. We're like, okay, it's you. Oh, it's you. You're going to influence this person better. Oh, you, come on, bring your people.
Yep.
And we're relentless. We're going to end this war.
That's great. I mean, the war's been over. Drugs won a long time ago. So at this point, I mean, there's literally nothing anybody has ever said to me that had me pause and go, oh, maybe this isn't right. I mean, the one I get every once in a while is just, but what about the people who are going to abuse it? I'm like, that's what they're doing already. They're already doing it. It's
already happening.
There's nobody sitting around going, I can't wait to just trip balls on magic mushrooms once it's legal.
Exactly.
No one sits around and goes, you know what, I'd love to be a heroin user, but not until it's legal. Like, this is not how drugs work, people. Like, no. I don't know.
That's the thing, no, because even the people that I talk with that are like, oh, I want to use it therapeutically, and I want to do clinical therapy, or I want to sit in a clinic and do it. Okay, but all those people are also microdosing.
Yeah.
So they already are like, oh wait, I can actually just do this. Yeah, it's that simple. It really is that simple.
And my theory on all these clinical environments is, if that's what it takes some of these people to try it, they'll do that. And then once they are no longer afraid of it, then they'll go, wait a minute, how much was that? What did I pay $4,000 for that? Okay, yeah, I'm going to go over here. I just watched this podcast. This guy just told me it's not that hard. So
absolutely. Yeah. And to me, the whole concept of tripping and, going into ceremony, so you're doing it around people that you're comfortable with. Personally, I'm not really comfortable with any therapist. As a veteran, I have been through. Well, hi, honey.
Okay.
All right. Here's my son. Hi. All right, I'm on a call. Okay, so you gotta go. I love you. Okay, you can stand right there. That's fine.
Your off-camera support.
Yes. Yeah, we're not gonna see you anymore. That's fine. It's okay. But yeah, no, but people really, the fear of abuse. I think right now, oh my God, like SB 58 in California, they had a bunch of moms come in whose kids died or something, or had bad experiences, or I think it's really a bunch of women that lost kids.
Okay.
Because they think, oh, cool. It's okay. Because, to me, as far as I'm concerned, because of criminalization.
Right.
You didn't allow us to all be speaking out loud, and that's to me why this has happened. And so now they're kind of putting walls in between and trying to force them to put some stopgap measures for group use and facilitated use. they're not trying to like take away individual use or cultivation or whatever, just like because they think that their kids died because of that. And it's like, no, your kids died because of criminalization, because they weren't allowed to hear the professionals. They weren't allowed to learn what's right and what's wrong. And the answer is never hiding information from people.
Right.
The answer is educating people. So I know like they're dealing with just so much fear mongering on that side, but it's a really good example. And I hope a lot of people are paying attention to those tactics, because we're going to see it in every other state. They're going to be bringing all these moms against all this stuff. And it's like, okay, then let's bring the rest of us moms out there. Like, I'm trying to figure out if I can go out there to speak as a mom, but I'm getting as many female moms or female non-binary, whomever, uterus carrying people out there to speak as parents and just parents in general about safety of the stuff. Like, if we can buy Tylenol, the leading cause of liver damage in America, and that can be on my counter, then so can mushrooms. Mushrooms can't kill you. It's not possible.
Not possible. The mushrooms themselves, physically acting within the body, cannot kill you at all. Now you can think that you grew wings and jump off of a building, but the mushrooms didn't kill you. The psychosis, the hallucination state that you were in is what did that. But
and we can educate to make sure people don't do that. And if we don't allow the educators and the professionals to have their freedom to do what they do best publicly, like we've been criminalized all this time, then we're not gonna get the best education needed. You need to let us just be free.
Right. And I mean, look at all the dangerous things we do. I mean, you have a much greater likelihood of dying just driving home from work any given night than you do of accidentally having a psychotic break and jumping off of a building while on a psychedelic drug. It's just it's so rare, so unbelievably rare. We don't outlaw cars, right? No. How many people accidentally fucking shoot their heads off with guns? Or their friends, literally all the time. I read a statistic on how many spouses who in the middle of the night think that someone's breaking into their house and they shoot their spouses dead. It was something like hundreds every year. Hundreds of people accidentally murder their spouses because they think they're intruders in the middle of the night. I mean, and that hasn't
one person
that hasn't made we are not outlawing guns because of that. So like seriously, what? Maybe once a year or in any given year you'd have a tiny handful of people that maybe could do something like that. And it's at the end of the day, it's people get to live their own lives and do their own things, right? Like,
I mean, how many people drink themselves to death? I mean,
I take care of them all the time at my job. Yeah,
exactly. So we can,
and even when we tell them they're drinking themselves to death, they keep doing it.
Oh my God, yeah. They absolutely do. It's not fair, and like the arguments don't make sense,
right?
But they're enough that they are swaying people. So like, it's frustrating. So
I mean, I look at it like this: with psychedelics, even if you were, abusing them, let's say there's some sort of abuse you could have or you're doing them too much or whatever, you're not going to be able to go to work on them.
Nope.
And the next day, gone.
All gone.
No hangover, nothing. In fact, your vision's never been clearer. You've never had more mental clarity. I mean, if you're lining it up next to alcohol, there's no leg to stand on why that one's legal and the other one is not legal.
Absolutely. That's why it's
no therapeutic studies on the benefits of alcohol.
No. And like, that's why it's just weird. Like they're sitting here like, oh, these like, I don't know. I don't even care if it's 20 people over the last fucking 20 years, that have died in California. It like, how many people have died with alcohol or opiates? Or
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people.
Exactly.
At that point, you're at 1 million people a year. Those three items, you're over 1 million human beings a year, every single year.
And those
Yeah.
people right now or that conversation right now is dictating how California is about to decriminalize through the legislature. Like, of course, the people still have the right to do their own initiative, and I hope that they do, especially after I'm seeing what's going on. But it's so stupid that like the things that they can use to argue one way, they won't allow it for the other. It doesn't make sense. Does not compute.
Yeah. It's like the doctor that's like, you shouldn't smoke, kids. Like it's that.
Yep.
Right. That's
it's right.
It's not, there's no logic there.
No.
But I really believe that we're at the tipping point, and you're playing a part, to go back to the paint can, you are actively prying that lid up right now. So. All right, guys. So that was Lauren Feringa of Hippie and the Vet Foundation. Kind of cool. It's pretty exciting getting to hear, you can just be a person living your life, doing your stuff, working your job, raising your kids, whatever you're doing. And at any moment you can go, I want to be a full-fledged citizen of the United States. I want to exercise some of the rights that I have here. I want to start advocating for something I believe in, something I think is foundational and important for all the people in our country. And that's what she did, and that's what she's doing. And I think we're really blessed to have her as part of our community. And I think vets are really lucky to have someone like that advocating for them and for their healing. I just nothing but kudos and respect to her. So anyway, moving on. The time we've all been waiting for. A lot of you guys like some cannabis. A lot of you guys like mushrooms. A lot of you guys like both. And our next guest, he likes both. He likes it enough that he started a podcast, a very successful podcast that streams almost everywhere. When I ever get around to finding enough free time in the day to get this video podcast on all the audio platforms, I am sure he will play a role in helping me get that all figured out. I'm talking about Higher Peaks of Oregon Rooted. So without further ado, let's bring him onto the show. All right. What's up, brother?
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, so first off, this is a first for me. This is probably most people won't care about this. But we got dueling Shure SM7Bs right now.
Yes.
We got some clean audio, which is something that I have really struggled with. It's taken all my abilities and I still don't have it fixed.
You've been trying hard.
I'm trying. We'll get there. It's all good.
Yeah.
In the beginning, my mic sounded like crap and everybody's giving me a hard time. So at least I got that figured out. Now we got to figure out a process to get everybody else's, mic sounding good. I'm testing out a few things. If I wasn't struggling every week to book people and get recorded, I feel like I'm still being a classic ADHDer and everything's sort of falling together at the last minute. But we'll get there. We'll get it figured out. I'll get my process down. And
well, you sound good, though. You sound good.
Thanks, man. Yeah, well, that's all because of the studio broadcast quality microphone and nice preamps and all that good stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, first off, let me ask you this. How did you, you asked me on your show not too long ago, how did I hit your radar? I don't think we even ever talked about that on the show.
As far as how I found you. And
like, how do you know I existed?
I know. No one knows about you, man. Well, you're quite the presence. I'm always searching for people to interview, and I got into mushroom cultivation about 1.5 years ago, and your presence out there on YouTube is huge, and so I kind of just ran into you, man. It's pretty easy when you're putting out all that good information. One thing about it, I'll tell you, is for all the people that are getting into mushroom cultivation, it's hard to find good information. And, when I ran across you and started watching your shows, there was a lot of good information. So, obviously that's it. Same with vendors. There's good vendors, there's bad vendors. You kind of start to drift towards the good information and the better vendors, and a lot of them come through your podcast. So.
Yeah, we try to get the good ones. There are a lot of good ones, the holdouts. So for example, Basidium Equilibrium and a guy named Manna from Heaven. are both pretty well-known guys on Instagram, and both just phenomenal growers in their own right. Yeah, try to get those guys on a million times. They just had a release. Mana is finally offering a very small amount of his genetics for sale through Basidium Equilibrium site, and so yeah,
that was the apes and the
his apes
albinos.
Yep.
Yeah, they're beautiful fruits, man. I was lucky to run into Basidium early too. I ran into you and Basidium real early, and nice. I run 2 or 3 of their strains. I'd like to just buy them all, but we've talked about that.
Yeah, buy them all,
mistake.
and then it's a big rookie mistake. Yeah,
yeah.
I remember earlier on, it was all about buying somebody's library. Oh, did you hear so and so bought so and so's library?
Yep.
And now I'm just like, why did you do that? Do you know how much work you just created for yourself?
Yes, just to maintain the library, and then also too, like it doesn't give you much time to really focus on any one strain if you're going to try to run them.
Yeah, so, it's really. I've never said this, but I like metaphors. So here's one for tonight. It's like monogamy versus polyamory. It really is. So
sure.
you can do either one. I'm not telling you what to do, but there are pros and cons to each. If you stick with one fruit for a while, you're going to really get to know that fruit. You're going to have a deep relationship with that fruit. You're going to know all the great things and all the bad things about that one fruit. You just are going to have a more intimate knowledge of that fruit. Whereas when you play the Pokemon game, got to catch them all, you're going to have a little, it's like dating 19 women at the same time, like Axl Rose did back in the fucking 90s. Right. He didn't know anybody. I think I remember. Was that Stacy? Oh yeah. Right. Like you kind of know a little something about a lot of things, but not a lot about one thing. So I've said this before. I completely agree. I think if I had to do over, I would have forced myself to just grow 1 or 2 things.
Yeah.
For a fair amount of time, multiple grows. I just can't emphasize enough that I think that's the pro move when you're first starting out is
and I find I don't even get like a complete idea of the strain until I've gotten a good like 4 to 5 runs into it.
Oh yeah. Yes,
you know what I mean? I get, because
3 is like baseline. 3 is where you're starting to have an understanding. And then the next 2 is where the hypotheses about that strain that you're starting to have at the 3rd grow, you can sort of confirm or not confirm at that point. So I'd agree. 4 or 5 grows gets you to some actual understanding about.
Sure.
Cultivations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, I appreciate that. I still just feel like a guy in his basement. I'm looking at my laundry machines, in front of me here, piles of laundry that are folded but not put away. That's a classic geeky household move right there. And, I just still don't feel like the reach is maybe as big as it is, but I hope it is. I mostly just want people who are interested in growing mushrooms for their medicinal benefits to have a resource to really know what they're doing and make hopefully less mistakes than I made or less mistakes. Man, I hear some people, I'm like, you made all the mistakes, dude. Like you fucked up royally. I feel so bad for you. So it was really motivated by sharing the stories of people like you and Dave Wombat and just all these great Dirty South Myco, all these great growers that I got to know that I just wanted to bring on the show and celebrate them a little bit, let them toot their own horns, let them share some of their secrets, and it's worked out. So,
well, I think that it's what the mushroom cultivation, like the community needs. We need sharing of ideas without that's the right way, that's the wrong way. And too often as a beginner, when I was first beginning, I found people really judgmental about methods and ways to do things. And it's like, you can't do it that way, or that's the wrong way. And that may be true, but maybe not as well. That depends on where you're at, your location, your environment, your freaking what state you're in. It could matter, So, but when you share a bunch of ideas, then you can kind of choose for yourself which ones appeal and which ones don't. And then, as you know, me and you are a fan of FAFO.
Oh yeah.
So, pick a few things and start finding out.
Exactly. Yeah, I had somebody not too long ago message me and say, "Hey man, so I've been growing for 3 or 4 years." And he goes, I found your podcast. And he goes, "I can't believe how much I'm learning from your podcast." And he goes, and even things that I knew, hearing different, guests come on and talk about those same topics, he goes, it is evolving my cultivation. It is evolving my understanding. And it's not me. It's the people I'm bringing on, right? It's the conversations that we're having that's doing all that. So I believe in it. That's why when you reached out and I'm like, oh, cool. So this guy's got a cannabis podcast that's now evolving into a cannabis and psychedelic podcast. And about the same time, I had been seeing a lot of, because I'm trying to keep up on all the YouTube content creator stuff, and everybody's talking about pivoting a podcast. And I'm sort of trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to go beyond just cubensis. I want to more broadly appeal to mushroom cultivation in general. And then the other issues like decriminalization, integration therapy, all that kind of stuff. And so, talking with you, it was like, oh, cool. Like, it's okay to do that. It makes sense to do that. It's really smart if you start very small and very focused.
Yeah.
It just gives you a lens. But then it makes sense to evolve.
It does. Yeah. I can tell you there's a gap right now in that area, though, between cannabis and mushroom cultivation. Now, living in Oregon, and we have decriminalized all drugs, there's a different culture here in terms of, in general, across the states. It's more open as well. And that gap, I don't know why it's there. I see a lot of people that grow and use cannabis as a medicine use mushrooms, and I see it vice versa, but I don't see the cultivation intermingle very well. And so trying to bring those two worlds together has been a challenge. It really has. It's been great, and I'm going to continue to do it the best I can. But man, it's actually more of a challenge than you think it is.
I imagine. So you're talking to these cannabis growers, and you're talking about mushroom cultivation. Have you found there to be stumbling, like common mistakes that cannabis growers make when trying to pivot into growing mushrooms?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's two different worlds. I mean, it really is a plant versus a fungus, and I think that's part of it. Is a lot of cannabis growers, as good as they become, there's still a big fear of stepping over to the dark side, if you will. Like, there's a bigger fear of the mushrooms in the cannabis world than there is in the mushroom world of cannabis, if that makes sense.
Sort of.
So if you're already,
say that.
If you're already head deep in mushrooms, if you're in head deep cultivating mushrooms, you're already comfortable with a certain level of gray area, right?
Okay, I get it.
So looking at cannabis, you're like, yeah, that's, no problems, easy. Maybe I could step into growing cannabis if I wanted to, but people growing cannabis, there's kind of a general fear still of jumping into that kind of growing style, with a fungus or even the implications of doing so. It seems like they're all gung-ho to grow that plant and back that plant, but growing fungus is like, ooh. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
See, when you first said that, I actually thought you meant about the experience of using it. I thought you meant like...
Well, that too, of course.
That I think might be the case. I think somebody who's comfortable with cannabis but has not experienced psychedelics might be a little trepidatious about it. Whereas once you've tripped and you've let go of those reins, you're like, cannabis. Oh, sure. Right.
Yeah, that's that's definitely absolutely part of it, for sure. But you do see a lot of cannabis people dabbling in mushrooms just because of it's a natural thing. It's a natural medicine. And really, I think once they dabble and see the benefits mentally, then they become very interested. But it's a big step. And but with that said, that's why I kind of got into both, is because, if you can grow half your medicine say plants, so some physical ailments you can grow cannabis for, and then you can grow some mushrooms for your mental ailments. That's half your pharmaceutical needs right there, if not more.
Unless you have very specific pathological issues, yes, that's a pretty nice blend.
Yeah, and I got thyroid issues, so I'm going to be taking thyroid, obviously. Right. But it's
no mushroom for that yet.
No, right. But my point being is that's all I need. I don't have to take pain pills. I don't have to take benzodiazepines. I don't have to take antidepressants, anti-anxieties, any of that. And I do struggle with those things. But I'm able to use mushrooms on a kind of a changing schedule over the year and work with all that. So I'm trying to bring those two people together, show them what they can do.
I like that. I mean, in my day job, I spend a lot of time talking with people when the situation justifies it about both, and just as an alternative, because the hospital I work for has not yet gotten they won't get completely behind it until it's federally, a federally cool thing. They don't, even if it's okay in my state, like Ohio is okay for medical use, but they're always like the last hospital to jump on board anything. So they can't talk about it.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to let you know this. So the biggest feedback I had on our episode when you came on, Oregon Rooted, was the fact I got more feedback about your statements about how you talk to people when I had asked you, do you present the cannabis or mushroom it to your patients in the hospital setting? And you said, heck yeah, or whatever. I don't know. I can't quote you on it, but you were very passionate about the answer. And I had more emails about that. People going, go Myco Geeky. Yes. Yeah. They're so happy with your passion for sharing that information. So that was cool.
I mean, and what I love, I have not had a single nurse. I mean, trust me, nurses love to stab each other in the back. But no one's ever said, I heard what you said. You shouldn't talk about that. I've never had that.
Yeah.
And I openly talk about it with the doctors. And the closest thing to judgment I've gotten is, well, we can't talk about that. They've made it very clear that physicians can't talk about that. But obviously you can talk about whatever you want. They really don't care. I would say more than half of our physicians, if allowed by the hospital, would be talking about these as options, because we get in these bad situations where they're just in this complete opioid dependent loop, and they're coming to the hospital expecting, well, okay, I can't get it on the street, but if I, present a certain way, I can get it in the hospital. And most of them are pretty candid. Like, look, man, we've looked at all your, we can look at your entire medical record and we see what's happening. We're physicians. We can assess you, and we're assessing you as someone who is coming here now at this point just for opioids. And we can't do that. It can't just be a dispensary for opioids. We already saw what happened when we were doing that, So people need alternatives to that. And cannabis very often solves that problem.
True. I'd also like to know the MOA, though, on mushrooms, psilocybin in pain, because I know that both microdosing and macrodosing for me have levels of pain relief.
I agree.
Of course, only during the time of consumption, during the time of the trip or the time of the use. But there's got to be something to it that affects your pain receptors or something that I would like to see them look into more.
Well, so, I mean, there are the physical nerve receptors that are signaling to your brain that something's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the brain processing pain. Pain is... the actual experience of pain is the way the brain is processing the inputs, right? Mm-hmm. It's like your check oil light goes on, and that just means the sensor went off, but then the engine is going, right. Change your oil, change your oil. Your oil's getting low. You're going to seize your engine up. That's all. The actual experience of pain is that. It's the brain is now processing this data that's coming from various parts of your body and saying, freak out, worry about this. You don't like this. Do something about this. This is not good. So for narcotics, I just talked to somebody yesterday about this. I said, So she was waiting to get an X-ray. She had to get a Percocet because we ultimately found out she'd broken her tibial plateau. It's like your tibia, which is your big bone in the lower part of your leg. It bears basically all your weight. So if you break this little part of the plateau there, it's a bad break. It's really hard to move. It's really painful. And so we gave her Percocet thinking, okay, if we get this Percocet in her, she'll be able to go get her X-ray. And it hadn't kicked in yet. And then finally I came to check in on her and she goes, oh, it kicked in. And I go, good. I go, have you tried moving your legs? She goes, no, it still hurts. And she goes, but I kind of don't care. And I said, you nailed it. What narcotics do is it separates the way the brain responds to that input. And so I think there is likely some component of that. I don't think it's massive like it. I think, cannabis, it can be pretty profoundly affecting the pain response. But I think there has to be some truth to that in how we choose subjectively to process our pain experience. I think it might give us a heads up on not being so negative about it, right? Not dwelling on it.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So so you're a cannabis user, then you're a cannabis grower, and then you're a cannabis podcast host. Get us from step 2 to step 3. I always love hearing what motivates people to go from the active to the passive presence online.
Sure. Well, I tried cannabis at the age of 18. I had tried other drugs, and man, just to keep the story short, the first time I tried cannabis, like the sun, the moon, and the stars all kind of just came in alignment. It was strange. It was a typical story. I tried it, and then I listened to a couple good songs, and it was just amazing. And then played some video games, and it was amazing. And then I jumped in a car, and my buddy took me for a drive, and it was just simply amazing. I mean, it was just awesome. And so, I decided at that point that was going to be a part of my life pretty much for a while, at least. And it was, but back then in Oregon, it was still illegal, although shortly after that, in my 20s, it became medically available here. But by the time I'd hit my 20s, it was still just like any other drug, man. It was a hurry up and wait game. And I just really hated that. I hated the feelings it gave me. I felt like I was buying a drug. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be buying drugs because I didn't see it as a drug. So I had took a job at Nabisco and started making some good money. So I bought a house on 6 acres and on the south 𝐦𝐿𝐻 towards Roseburg, and started thinking I could grow. And so I started throwing out bag seed, right? And I got everything to flower. I got most everything to flower, but to the flower stage, but never completed a complete plant at that point. This was like in 99. Tried closet growing, couldn't really get completed. By the time 2001 had hit, I was growing on top of apartment complexes, like carports and shit. I was really guerrilla growing. Surprised I never got caught. And I did that for the next, until 2015, it was all guerrilla grow. And it was either inside or guerrilla growing outdoors. But I did that as a passion to provide my own medicine, just simply for that. And 2015 hit, and we passed the recreational laws here in Oregon, which was huge for us. And at that point, I really started enjoying recreational cannabis. It was a lot easier to get. It was a lot easier to get genetics, stuff like that. So there was also, the ability to actually grow your own plants in Oregon. And so I just jumped on board with that, started growing plants. Of course, because I'd been black market growing, I was, there's a 4-plant count here, but I don't think I've hit a 4-plant count since it started. I'm usually around 20 or 25, but they don't care. So, and then, that turned into just providing my own medicine over the years, and it worked out great. I provide friends, though, never really sold or anything, just would provide neighbors, friends, family, whatever. And then it actually turned into a medical issue where I was providing for my uncle who has Parkinson's. And I still do that. So I provide for him through the year for his Parkinson's. And that led me into other forms of medicine. Now, I tried mushrooms along the way a few times, but the reliability and the quality was awful. I mean, you'd have to take 7 grams of mushrooms to get in, to get anything going, really.
Right.
And it was always ugly and dirty and broke up, and it just was questionable, and it wasn't very pleasing. And so 2016 hit, and the podcast came around because there was so much going on in Oregon, and I wanted to share it with people. Like, I wanted to share this culture that we had, kind of like you have done with mushrooms, man. It's a good culture if you dig deep and look for the good stuff in there. And I wanted to share that. So I've been listening to podcasts at work, and I'm like, fuck, it's a good way to share it, man. I can do that. I can't start my own network, right? My own TV show. So I did that out of passion, and started that in 2016. And then that just evolved naturally into mushrooms, because at some point I wanted to provide myself with good quality, mushrooms that were grown to what I would consider a medicinal level, and also have them available for me as a regular basis, not something where it just comes and you just wait for it to come, and then when
Right.
it comes, you have the ability, then okay, oh, I got it now. Instead, I wanted to say, okay, on my birthday or on July 4th or whatever day I want to plan and do this, I could do that. And so, I thought to myself, just like every cannabis grower, I'm like, can I even do that? I mean, I've been growing cannabis for
And now this was
20+ years.
2016, 2017? Yeah. Okay.
Well, when I started thinking about it. And then about a year and a half ago, I actually got past the can I do it stage and said, I'm just going to FAFO it until it works out.
Yeah.
And started diving into it. And then it's been a year and a half since. And then because of that, I wanted to bring that to the podcast. Bottom line is there's all these psychoactives. You talked about this before the show. There's all these tools that we use every day. Caffeine, pharmaceuticals if we have to. Cannabis and mushrooms, and people use all kinds of weird things to manage their well-being all the time. And so used properly, I think that those are really good tools and can be healthy tools as long as I'm kind of in the natural aspect, And so, I think that what I'm really trying to do now is bring out the psychoactive culture, if you will, not just psychedelics and cannabis, but anything that is available to us that we can use responsibly as tools for our health and well-being.
I mean, so yes, when Dr. Rick is on, he will use the phrase psychoactive quite a bit because he's looking through the lens of, a neurosurgeon and somebody who's very well-versed in the ways both pathologies and traumas work in the brain, but also then how drugs work in the brain. And I think it's really true. I don't think something we have not talked about on the show that I want to start talking about is we have absolutely no problem drinking caffeinated beverages. It used to just be in the morning to wake us up, through a cup of coffee. Now with energy drinks and whatnot, it's constantly, it's all the time. I mean, we're definitely using caffeine as a tool. And then we're using alcohol as a tool, right? You go to the bar, you want to ask the pretty girl out, you're afraid to, but if you get a couple beers in you, now you can do it. You're more social, you're more gregarious. So we use alcohol as a tool. We use Tylenol as a tool. We use all these drugs as a tool. And then what we haven't done, though, because of scheduling and history or whatnot, there's still a lot of people who are just completely closed off to both cannabis and psychedelics of various sorts, because there's this stigma that's associated with it, rather than looking at it as, what does this actually do? Hamilton Morris does this a lot in his in Hamilton Morris's Pharmacopoeia, and all the time he's on Vice News. He's always saying like, well, I'm a chemist, but I would have to experience this. So I loved the message in that Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, because he not only did a great job of documenting history surrounding certain substances, but then he almost in all cases experiences it for himself. And that just seems like a more holistic approach as a chemist who's specifically studying psychoactive chemicals. But we've lost a lot of that. Psychiatrists used to do that. They used to use substances to bring out more therapeutic states in people. We lost that in the 50s. Hopefully we're about to be getting a lot of that back. But 100%, like, grow your own drugs, right?
Well, yeah, and
grow your own drugs. That easy. Like, then
it
I
is,
know
and
where
that's the
it comes
thing is,
from.
that's a huge thing. People don't, I mean, for me, it's a huge thing because, like, when I started growing mushrooms and I kind of started to figure it out to where I was getting flushes coming in, I'm like looking at the quality I was bringing in as a beginner was better than the quality I was seeing coming out of this market that was just there. And now with a year and a half behind me, I'm proud of the work I'm doing, not because I want to show it off, but proud because then I can provide myself with this very high level of medicine. And then my friends too. It's weird. I've watched, and I think we all do this as cultivators. I hope we do, but I share openly with my close friends if they like to use, mushrooms. And I've watched them use these mushrooms that I've just given to them and watched them like heal in front of me. Like they're happier, better people. Yeah. And actually have a lot of them have stopped using mushrooms now because they've gotten to where they want to be. And I'm just watching this happen going, this is friggin' cool. Yeah. And it's not like other drugs where you give someone some meth and 2 weeks later they're addicted and they're living on the street. I'm giving these people these mushrooms and then a month, 2 months, 3 months later, they're just like, I'm good, I'm done. And it's like, that's medicine, right?
I mean, that's not the kind of medicine Big Pharma cares about, but yes, that is a profound medicine. Yeah. That is a sacred medicine. That's a special medicine. If you can, I mean, I love talking about the novelty of psilocybin because you hear people go, I had a heroic dose and I stopped smoking.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So
drinking.
You're like a nicotine patch. You got to do it every week, right? No, of course you don't.
No.
You did it one time. And now if he's using mushrooms, it's for a very specific purpose. I had FUNGUY mycology on not too long ago. And I had made some comment about how I really liked the museum dose of 𝐥𝐤𝐤 because of its euphoric effects. It was very euphoric. It is very euphoric.
It is. I like 𝐥𝐤𝐤. Yeah, I do.
And he goes, well, don't forget, he goes, euphoria is its own therapy. And I'd never had somebody like say that to my face. Like, of course I want to feel euphoric. That's a great feeling, especially on a Friday night after, a long week. Who doesn't want to feel that? That's why people drink. And I was like, oh, that's true. No one has ever formally said seeking out or creating euphoric experiences for yourself can be therapeutic for yourself. And then I was like, wow, it's like when you hear a comic make a joke that you're like, how has no one made that joke yet? It's so obvious when you hear it, right? But it's true. In lower doses, and we have not talked a lot about this. A lot of what we talk about, a lot of what's messaged online and social medias is the macro dose or the micro dose. So it's either over 2 grams or it's 0.2 grams, right? But there is a middle space in that where you do feel some of the effects of the psilocybin, but you're not stone cold tripping and it's not totally subtherapeutic. And there's I know a lot of people who use it at that dose. A lot of people, but no one's really talking about using it at that dose.
No, they're not. And I'll be honest too, a couple of my friends that are in some more demanding professions, one's actually both of them are in medical fields. They use a micro dose on the daily that really keeps them, I guess, performing at their best, but they never macro dose. They never have a big trip. They just do their little, whatever, 0.75, and find it real well. And I think there's a lot of research we could do there. I think microdosing has its place. I think the trick with microdosing is an individual getting your amounts down. your dose
what
down.
Is your dose? Yeah.
And see, there needs to be some personal research there to find out what that magic dose is, because you can easily go too far and you can easily go too little and not get where you want to be.
And so when I found mine, I started high and then I slowly moved it down. But no, we're not spending too much time talking about finding that dose. It's usually just, I got a guy, he makes my macro or my micros, or I started making them myself, and this is just the dose I take. But yeah, I think as time goes on, we will probably start honing in on what really is the ideal micro dose for each person. Now, in general, that is also a field in pharmacology that's just beginning to be explored. Up until very recently, unless it was a female-only drug, drugs are tested by the FDA on 180-pound white males. That's it. 180-pound white males. That's who dictates dosage for drugs.
I see.
And so
wow.
if
Great.
And I experience this all the time, we'll have situations where we know what the standard dose to start sedation is, and I'll be looking at this guy like he's 320, guys. What are we starting the propofol at? Like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Or you're going to give him 50 mics of fentanyl? That is not enough fentanyl for his big toe, guys. Come on, give me a break. But it doesn't matter because there are all these protocols in place, right? So then you just have to nickel and dime them till you get them sedated or whatever. And that's that individual situation where there are women that are on doses of things that are absolutely the wrong dose for them. It's because they're on a drug that's for both men and women, and the dosage was created for men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're still pretty rudimentary when it comes to some of those pharmacological concepts. And hopefully, as time goes on, I think the ultimate evolution is going to be using AI, using genetic information, using really sophisticated data sets to really hone dosage in for people, and then it gets generated. I mean, we've seen it in like sci-fi movies, right? Where like, okay, I need my drug for this, and it makes it just for you. That's probably eventually where we're going. I mean, they're already talking about it.
I think just, you say rudimentary, I think even with cannabis, with edibles as a good example, I've been able, same with edibles on cannabis, you got to find your dose. With cannabis, again, you can take an edible and go way overboard by accident, and then you're seeing dragons and you can't wake up for 3 days. You take too much, it doesn't do nothing. Well, I've been able to hone my edible percentages down pretty close to what I need, just based on the fact of the testing. If I know what's in there every time, and then work with that, that gives me a much closer idea of what I need. If we could have some sort of affordable testing for psilocybin, we could do at home, then we may be able to get at least to closer standard of what would work for us, because we could say, all right, well, at 3% psilocybin, I take this much, and this is what it does. Yeah. But
I think it can. So Miraculous Labs, they have a 𝐥𝐤𝐞 test that is like a reagent test. That it's a little problematic, at least in my opinion, and a few other people's opinion, who are of a scientific ilk, in that you have to be able to very precisely weigh out an exact amount of it. And so you have to be significantly accurate to multiple significant figures. And that usually is a scale that most people don't own. Most people are not buying that scale. That's a very expensive scale. And not only that, but you'd have to have the lab technique to be that careful about it. And I've never seen any messaging from them that says the most important thing about our test is that you give our test the precise amount of psilocybin, or the test is useless. It means nothing. So if you put too much in, it means nothing. If you put too little in, it basically means nothing. Not to mention then that when I'm reading a colored jar, right, everybody's light color is different in different rooms. So there's no standardization for that. And so it isn't reliable. It's not a reliable way. It gets you close. It gives you an idea. It lets you know, do you have like a super potent mushroom, or do you have just like a regular mushroom? But it doesn't get us the numbers we need. So yes, there is. And then there's HPLC, which not everybody is going to pay $150 to batch test every batch of homogenized, ground up mushrooms. So we need we need something in between that's closer to HPLC, but better than the reagent test.
Absolutely.
Someday.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's no different than cannabis testing. I mean, honestly, if you really get down to it, in Oregon, we don't have a state standard. So, you take your cannabis sample to whatever lab and have it tested. You take it somewhere else, you're going to be 3, 5, 6, 7% difference, if not more. And so, I mean, you're right. It tells you if it's potent or not. That's about it. You really just have to smoke it.
Yeah, the first person to mention this issue was both Ed Grand, and it was within 2 days that they both mentioned this. It was Ed Grand, and it was George Selhorn of Flourish Labs. And George said, look, man, he said, in cannabis, there is proficiency testing centers. And the idea there is that if you are an HPLC lab and you routinely participate in this proficiency testing, it's a way of showing everybody that you're doing pretty good work. And all that amounts to is if there's 5 HPLC labs, they all get the same homogenized sample. They test it, and then they see how close everybody is. Fresh Air Exchange on Instagram just did one of these on his own. He took his sample. He's not an actual proficiency testing center, but he used this idea, and he sent the same homogenated samples to all these labs, and there was quite a variation in results.
Yeah.
Some labs were similar, which, maybe indicates they're using a similar protocol in their sample preparation and how they're testing. And then some were radically lower or radically higher. And it just shows, it begs the question. I've had people say that the lab, they're anonymized, but the lab that was very low, one person, not going to name names, they said, oh, well, that's how that's a garbage lab. And I would actually argue that might be how you have the most rigorous scientific lab is the one with the lower number.
Yeah.
Because Ed Grand was telling me, he goes, well, let me tell you how it went in cannabis. If you had the highest numbers, you did the most work. Who wants to hire the accurate lab where all the numbers are low?
This is still true today. This is still going on in the cannabis scene in Oregon. And it's just a payoff. It's a form of payoff. We'll come to you. You get the good numbers. But like I said, there's no standard. So this lab doesn't have to have the same standard as another lab. It's absolutely asinine. I don't even know why they have testing without what should be a national standard, really.
Or you could have, there's multiple problems. So with every substance you're testing in HPLC, sometimes there's a huge difference in how important it is for it to be, so there's 𝐸𝐸 Chemical. That's where a lot of people, they're based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. They provide high quality standards. But I believe for psilocybin and some of the other tryptamine alkaloids in those mushrooms, I believe they guarantee 88% purity. Now, unless you got a PhD in biochemistry, you don't actually know whether that's enough for that substance or not.
Right.
Well, maybe it all depends upon how much research is done, or if you're truly trying to use your HPLC machine to identify a truly novel substance that hasn't been standardized and a bunch of protocols created for. But there are some substances that would require much more clean, 98% would be considered dirty, like not good enough. You would need from like a place like Cerulean, that's all theirs are like 99.7% pure. But unless you're a biochemist, you don't know, right? And a consumer doesn't know any of that. So even if your product says, oh, tested by HPLC lab, okay, you don't know what standards they're using. You don't know what protocols they're using. They don't know their sample preparation methodology. You don't know any of that stuff. So honestly, it becomes a marketing gimmick, just like
it does.
Organic.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
Right. Yeah. Good point. It really does. It gets very thinned out. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's the one thing that big pharma can bring to the table. I've said to a lot of people in our little private talks, man, if you can figure out dosing, you win. You win this game. If you can accurately and repeatably create products that have accurate dosing on them. I mean, that's literally what big pharma will do. When they come to the table with whatever, they're going to do synthetics. You think these you think like Pfizer wants to grow mushrooms? They don't want to grow mushrooms. Nah.
No.
Scientists researching this might grow mushrooms, but all the big pharmaceutical companies, they're going to synthesize all this stuff. They're not.
Yeah.
They have E. coli grow it.
Now, and it's something to relate from cannabis back to mushrooms is there a full spectrum mushroom? Like, are you getting a specific type of high, not just because of the alkaloids, but because of everything that's present in the mushroom?
Everything.
I mean,
non-active compounds. You don't know what roles they play. Yeah.
Exactly. So like cannabis, with all the terpenes and flavonoids and all that, what roles does a full spectrum play on the ultimate high versus a completely isolated, a distillate, which is a real flat high to me. Distillate's a 5-minute high and it doesn't do much. Takes you up right back down. And it's like, there's something more to a full spectrum fruit
because it's
flower.
all about the terps, bro. That's why.
Well, you laugh, but relating that back to and relating that back to the mushrooms, what else in there is playing a role in how you experience that particular high? Yeah. Because everybody says a cube's a cube, and maybe when you look at science, but how it affects you can be different, strain to strain, even time to time. You can have the same strain and even have a different experience. So I mean, it's hard to say what a cube is unless you look at it scientifically. Which
is also what makes this particular type of medicine very hard to study on not a quantitative, not like numbers and data, but qualitative studies get much more complicated because of this, because there's so many factors. What's in your stomach, right, plays a role. What's not in your stomach. How long if nothing's in your stomach, how long has nothing been in your stomach?
Yeah.
Are you
Did you lemon tech?
Did you lemon tech? Did you, just put it in your tea? Did you chew a fresh mushroom? Is it dried? Is it in honey?
Is it fresh?
It in a chocolate bar? How fresh is it? What's the shelf? Yeah. Like, there's 1,000 layers to all that get very hard to test for and hard to make repeatable, which goes back to my whole, when you can get the dose figured out, where I just know as long as that expiration date is good on that bottle and I take my little psilocybin pill, I know exactly the dose I'm getting. That's a big, big step forward for sure.
Yeah. I do notice this though, with different strains, it treats people differently in the sense that some people gravitate towards certain ones. They just do. So I don't know what that's about, but it seems like certain ones treat people well. Like you said, the Enigma. There's a large following of people that find that treats them really good. Yeah. So
some people love Lizard King. Some people love KSSS. I mean, but there. I wouldn't say there are just maybe 5 or 6 noteworthy cultigens where you hear over and over again. Yeah. This is my favorite, or this is one of my favorites. But it's like these days with craft beers, right? Dear Lord, have you been to these craft beer walls at the grocery store? I mean, is there anyone not making craft beer these days? There's 4 billion options. It's absurd. And they're all colorful labels, and we love all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Bell's makes a great Oberon. I don't care how many craft beers there are, but Bell's makes some great beer, man. Yeah, they really do.
Sure.
And so I think it's like that with the different various cultigens. There are some that are just really notoriously great. And what's in those? What it'd be great to know what all is in those, creating that specific experience. Now, I got a question for you. So let's go back to your show, your podcast, stories you've heard. This can be either cannabis or any psychedelics. Obviously, we'd love to hear the mushroom stories.
Sure.
But I'd love to hear stories, because we've been talking about dose, we're talking about effects and all that stuff. Any memorable stories about just really amazing trips or highs, or also on the contrary, any like horror stories, warning, like stories that are great, cautionary tales for people.
That's funny. I, honestly have not had, my bad trips were never like scary bad in terms of like monsters or anything. I think I've had some cry in the corner things.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's mental health though. That's the work you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. The only thing I could say is the most influential trip I had was I took which doesn't seem to be a popular strain, but the 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤. Have you heard of those?
𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤?
Yeah, it's SYGY.
Oh, 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤.
𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
I've grown it. I like it. Mm-hmm.
Wow, man. That's for me, it's a strong one.
Too much.
Well, I took so it was ones that I grown, and it was the first time I had tried my own mushrooms that I grew, which I really revel in that. You know, that's part of the cannabis thing, is that when you grow from start to finish something that you then consume as a medicine, that full circle really kind of adds to the enjoyment. And so this is the first set of mushrooms I'm eating that was produced by my own hands from start to finish. And I decided I'm going to lemon tech it. And it was like 4 grams. And I didn't think, you know, because I've done 7 grams before. I've done a lot of 5 grams, which I prefer. For me, that's a good macro. But so I thought doing this 4 grams was going to be, you know, hey, I got this, right?
But you had just dried these, right? Like these were pretty
fresh. Oh
fresh.
Yeah, fresh is fresh. Fresh is fresh is fresh.
Okay.
And I didn't use any heat to dry them either. I put them in the dehydrator, but no heat. I don't know if that matters. There's arguments there, but yeah, I took 4 grams, crushed them up, put them in some lemon juice, and downed it a half hour later. And man, bro, it broke me.
Yeah, the uptick on that one is a little bit quicker, huh?
It was too quick, and it was really potent, and it just became one of those trips where everything was just open-eyed visuals. But my reality was falling apart. So like I'd look at the walls, and they would, you know how you have that old school glass that didn't break into 1,000 pieces? It would be these big chunks. Well, so my reality around me would break like that. The wall, everything in my vision would crack, and then it would slip off into nothingness. And
see, I love that.
Dude, what it was presenting to me, what that was symbolizing for me was the ego death for me. That was the level of ego death where all my memories, all my reality was literally just falling off into this void. I was sitting on a couch, and that was the only thing that wasn't falling into the void. And it was just, everything was falling off. And then as my reality broke away and fell off, it was just left with nothing. And then it replaced it with all these fucking beautiful flowers. Like the walls came back, but they were just these white walls. And then it was just these plants and bushes and trees and flowers that started growing all over the room, covered the floor, covered the couch, covered me. It was, wow. Yeah. That was a ego breaker. And I'd never experienced that with open eyes. Like, you know, it's one thing to close your eyes and go lay down or some shit, but damn, that was too much. I haven't touched those since, man.
Now the real question is, if you had closed your eyes when you did that, what would you have seen?
I did. So it was like, it went from, you know how you get these geometry. You get the visions where you get the geometry. This kind of went beyond that. It went from geometry and detail into these bright, really bright basic colors: red, blue, green, yellow, brown, black, just these basic colors. And they were really bright. And it was just this endless workings of Lego designs. Right. So it was just
shout out to Lego.
Yeah. Oh man. But
Lego, you guys could merge with psychedelics. It would be amazing.
Each piece was its own color, right? And it was very, very bright. And but they would rearrange themselves into something, and then stop, and then rearrange themselves into something. It was really weird. And then the peak of it was where I really learned the biggest stuff. And that was, I was sitting there in the midst of this and all these plants and shit are around me, and they kind of cleared away. And then the wall, of course, the wall's still white. In this wall, I started seeing these, again, this is all open hide, very, very confusing. But I started seeing these little like poles come up from this endless space. So the wall looked like it was endless. Like it was just white space that just didn't stop. And there was these little poles that started popping up. And each pole was a person, right? There was an individual. And at the top of these poles were these multicolored globes that were just ever changing in different colors, right? Well, these poles were endless. So in the vision, it was just endless poles to where I couldn't see anymore. And each pole had its own orb, and the orb had a different color that was changing. And what was overwhelming me was that it was this trip was telling me that these were all people, right? And each person was represented by a different color, right? So that was their individuality. But that color was ever changing, although it was different from everyone, and everyone was beautiful, right? So well, that's what it conveyed to me, is that like we're all individuals, but we're all beautiful in our own unique way. It was really profound, man. And so I've tried to keep that inside of me, you know, but it's hard in reality.
Oh, in reality, the ego comes back. I mean, that's my favorite thing, is the talks about ego death and the assumption that because this community deals with a substance that can give you ego death, that somehow that's going to be permanent. But we come back to our baseline consciousness, which includes a fully functional ego. Yeah.
Yeah. Fully functioning, traumatized, defensive ego, man.
Now, the hope, though, is like you said, it gives you something to hold on to. It gives you, you can say, I have had this experience, right? Like, I have had this. It's like the star quarterback catches the football in the end zone. They win the game. They win the state championship, and he grows up to be a lineman, right? And he drinks every night, and he hates his wife. But he gets to hold on to that moment, right? And maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't.
Oh, it does.
No,
it's helped me. But yeah, this is the thing. This is the integration. Is that you can learn all these things from doing psychedelics, but you have to apply them.
You have to. Oh yeah, I could not. This is why we know people in the space where like, wow, have you done mushrooms? Because there's no integration happening. There's no. It's not. I think the foundational relationship to it is different. It's not viewed as something, maybe they don't hold it sacred. Maybe they don't, who knows? I'm not even going to hypothesize what's going on. But yeah, some people are just having that experience and then moving on. It's pretty much how I did it when I was a kid. I mean, that's how kids do it for sure.
Yeah. And I hate to sound like metaphysical and stuff, but it's like with things that you grow, so with plants and fungus, the intention that you put in there is ultimately, I think, the most important thing. I think even the good fungi touched on this on one of your shows, that like that's one of the most important aspects of the growing or the taking or the whatever, is the positive intention all the way through and what you want out of it. It's very important, man.
Yeah.
Even with cannabis, when I grow cannabis, I grow it with a certain kind of intention and certain love to get back in the end from that. And it just works with things that are alive, man.
I mean, so it works with many things. So I used to build furniture for a living. And in my house, I have maybe 30% of all the furniture in our house I've built. And so when I see my kids scratching a table that I built by hand out of wood that I cherished and loved and tried to celebrate that beautiful grain in a certain way, and now they've spilled, something on it, and now it's stained. I mean, it's like stabbing me. It's like it affects me, right? These things are things I really cared about and spent hours and hours building. And so when I use them, there's no way that my wife or my kids relate to those objects the way I do. Because I have the entire history of taking a raw piece of lumber, S4S'ing it, getting it square and true, pattern routing it, sanding it, joining it, all that process. So it means so much more to me. And when I use it, I just have a different experience. There's no way it's not true. And so the same with the mushrooms, or I mean, God, even if you've just grown a tomato, just grow a tomato bush, right? And you eat that tomato. First off, it tastes 1,000,000% better than,
of course.
It's unreal. Picking it directly off the vine, right? But if you did the work, now the thing though with gardening is, most of your daily interaction is weeding and watering, which is maybe not quite as exciting.
Well, I have to interrupt real quick. We know that most of mushroom cultivation is pressure cooking and cleaning.
Right. That's true. Yes.
Go ahead.
But we do get to watch them. I feel like we pay attention more. Once they've pinned, it's the show, right? Let's be honest, guys. I mean, you see your first pins and it's an exciting moment.
Yeah.
It's just exciting.
And what's crazy is I hate taking a flush down, I just,
you're just chopping down a tree, man.
I know. I look at it, I'm just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I just want to keep looking at it, or I just want to just set it off and just let it keep growing. But it's got to, heartbreaking. It even happens with cannabis. I get to the end of the season with my outdoor and I got this big plant and I'm like, I feel like I have to have a funeral and say a few words and do a microdose. And
but now you're getting back. This is the experience that our ancestors had all the time. They were connected to everything. Every food they ate, they grew or they hunted.
Yeah.
So it's easy to revere things, to cherish things, to hold things sacred when you're involved in every step of that process. We've completely lost that as a general rule in our society. That's why this works. I can't tell you how many people in my Discord have said, in the beginning it was the medicine, and now I don't know which is doing more for me, the cultivation or the medicine itself. The cultivation is also therapy for me. And I think it's what you said. It brings it all together. It's very hard to have a frivolous attitude or relationship with something that you spend all your time, energy, money, resources to grow. It's not like when I was 17 or 18 and we got a little bag of brittle, crumbled up, mushroom fragments in like a Ziploc bag that clearly had been reused 100 times somehow for something. And of course, it always comes out of somebody's coat pocket, and you're like, dear
underwear
Lord,
drawer.
Where did it come from? Yes. How are you going to have the same relationship to that? As you're just not going to.
No, not at all. And there's no love. And one thing I've learned from mushrooms is that intention carries through with it. My grows are better with just, if I'm just I'm going to get some fruits and I'm going to go and sell some fruits and just money driving or whatever it is you do with it's not good with it. It just has an effect. Everything comes out shitty.
Agreed. Well, and more importantly, like when FUNGUY was the first to start talking about this, about like loving your babies, Miss Mush SoCal's talked about it. I've had a lot of guests talk about this idea. Whether it's true or literally FUNGUY, the good FUNGUY basically said like, I believe that it matters that I love my mushrooms. And I actually don't care whether it's true or not, because I think the belief is the important part. It's like they've done studies that say that religious people live 7 years longer than non-religious people. It don't matter if there's a God or not. It just matters if they believe it.
Right.
That's the important part. That belief is a profoundly human trait and quality. So if you believe that, that's great. That's what matters. Hopefully it's true. And then if it's true, then all the money hungry people, their grows are going to suck. And, everything goes bad for them. Unfortunately, that's not how
I've noticed some of those labs are the dirtiest too. The bad intention labs, I've noticed, tend to be the most unkept.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you.
That's just an observation.
Stuff I can't really get into on the podcast, but I know people who have come in and rescued big grow operations where, they are only in it for the money. And they got 100 tubs, 400 tubs, 600 tubs, and they thought it was so easy, and they screwed it all up, and they just lost a massive amount of money. And now their entire space is just swarming with trichoderma. And so then they call up these guys on Instagram that clearly know what the hell they're doing, saying, help me, save me. And it's all because the motivation's wrong, right? Like, so they're always, the people they're hiring to consult are people that love mushrooms. They love cultivation. And because those people also have to pay rent and mortgages and all their bills too, they're willing to help out. But yeah, that's why for me, there was a point in the podcast when it first started, it was like, let's just do a podcast about growing mushrooms. I didn't think anything more of it than that. I know a bunch of cool people. Let's get them on. Let's talk about it. And then there was a point where I said, no, I'm really going to be here for people who want to use this as medicine, who want to have a respectful relationship with it, who you don't have to maybe consider it sacred, but something closer to that, where you're really earnestly looking for some healing process to occur from using this stuff. If down the road you use it in a more enjoyable way, a recreational way, that's fine too. But at the core, I'm here for people who are trying to heal issues with this medicine. And I think quite a few cannabis users, I don't know too many like utterly well-adjusted cannabis users that have no issues, life's perfect, and then just also happen to use cannabis. I think anytime you seek out any drug for any specific reason to, quote, feel better, there's probably some underlying issues that you're trying to resolve through medicine.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I got a question for you. So you're in, you mentioned earlier, the state of Oregon, very friendly for the substances we're talking about.
Yeah.
Almost still at this point, I would say maybe Washington's real close. I think the vibe in Detroit and in Michigan is a little different than I have spent quite a bit of time in Oregon. I'm from Michigan. There is a distinct difference in the vibe between Detroit and Oregon. You guys are very rooted.
Well said.
You guys are very rooted, whereas I feel the vibe I have sensed in Michigan is, wait, we're decriminalized? Wait, all the cops said they don't give a crap what we're doing over here? Let's go for it. And I saw like the an ounce just kept getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. They can't give it away fast enough. Right. And it was very much a free for all, and still continues to be about how do I differentiate myself in a flooded market. Sorry, Michigan. But I feel like Oregon, there's still plenty of that going on over there, but I do feel the vibe is a little bit different. I think there's a lot of people coming at it from a more respectable place. You want to talk a little bit about what you notice about that, how the movement has occurred? The mischievous players, the money hungry players versus the very organic rooted people that seem to want to be doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah, the state's really weird. The south part of the state is conservative. And then, from Eugene up, which is about midway up, it's completely opposite. I mean, and the further you get to, it's closer you get to Portland, the more liberal they get. I mean, to an extreme, really.
To an extreme,
yeah. Yeah. With that said, though, it kind of creates a balance. The best part is, for the most part, all these things that we're making legal in Oregon are for health reasons,
right?
Essentially, psilocybin has only been legalized for therapeutic use. Cannabis is recreational, but it's founded on the medical premise. We had medical for over 10 years, and then that turned into medical and recreational. We still have a big medical thing going on here. But I think the deep root of it is that it is for Oregon type of people, which generally is, what I observe is more hippier, Subaru style people.
Wait a minute,
kind of like
what?
Colorado, man.
Wait a minute, there's Subarus in Oregon? Are you serious?
Oh God,
I'm kidding.
I think yeah. I think
like
next to Colorado,
you have to own a Subaru there.
Yes,
my brother-in-law owns a Subaru. Yeah, he's in Portland.
Yeah, and I don't think that you can be any type of person today in today's world and come to Oregon and you will not be an outcast. Doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you're I don't care what your gender issues are. I don't care what your health issues. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're a hippie or a conservative. There's a spot for everybody here. It's really funny, and it's pretty accepting that way, barring any of the national stuff going on. But cannabis, I see cannabis was, did turn into a money thing at one point, because what happened is hemp happened.
Hemp happens.
Hemp happens. The players in THC in Oregon are living soil, organic, no-till, permaculture, non-monoculture farms. Right. The hempers are the monocropping, bug bringing, disease, these fungal molds are present now. Business people that are all money. Yeah. And when that became legal across the nation, when hemp became a thing, that just kind of destroyed, a lot of the cannabis scene, because it pushed out a lot of THC farmer areas. Like the farms went from being these small craft farms to multiple acres of just the one crop.
Were they just buying them out, or were they, how did that evolution happen?
Yeah, because what happened is it was a good timing thing. What happened is the THC farms, if you were a farm that came out the gate for 2 or 3 years, the first 2 or 3 years, it was great. You got a lock on the market, you got your flower out there, people liked it, then you survived. But after a couple years, they started to have to limiting licenses. And then so they cut licensing for THC, but then hemp came aboard, and hemp is not regulated like THC. It's a completely different ballgame through the Department of Agriculture, not through Oregon's OLCC. And so these hemp farms were backed by these craft THC farms were never backed by big corporate money. There were these families that had just enough money to get involved and get this stuff going. Well, when hemp hit, it was all backed by business plans and corporate money, and buy these big plots of land and plant all this hemp because it's the new gold rush, which was bullshit. And yeah, they did buy out a lot of these areas and farms and stuff that were either going under or couldn't make it, or literally just buying up land of grapes. The people were coming in and kicking out grapes and pears and putting in hemp. And really, man, it just destroyed a lot of the outdoor arena around here. And so I don't know if that's really cannabis as much as it's hemp. It's not really the THC farmers. Those guys are still rooted. They're still doing the living soil. They're doing these practices. They're not putting out plastic in these rows for 6 acres and shit like that. But the hemp kind of destroyed that. Now, what we're seeing now is the hemp, the CBD fad is finally dead, or really dying hard. And so that is allowing some room to get healed here from that. But again, we're still capped on THC licenses. So there's really no more changing going to happen. It's just now what you do is you go around and you drive down in the rural areas and you see these empty fields with plastic blowing in the air, and empty greenhouses that have holes in them because they've been sitting for the last 3 years because it was all hemp, and it's just, they did lose all their money. I'll tell you that. All the investors lost their money, but it really screwed up the cannabis.
So what caused that? Because I'm sitting here going, sure, I've seen the posts about, oh, why use this when you can use hemp, and hemp is, the greatest product on earth. But it was always been legal to grow hemp, hasn't it? Do I not understand this right?
Yeah. So there's 2 different kinds of hemp that people don't realize. There is industrial hemp, which it looks like bamboo. It literally grows in these tall, like 10, 11, 12 feet tall stalks with very little side branching, mostly just leaves up the stalk. And then you've got CBD hemp, which is a high resin.
So they were coming in to grow the CBD hemp.
Right.
Okay. I get
so industrial hemp is for like making shorts and paper, and it's really what CBD hemp was trying to come across as, is we can do anything with it, right? Hemp can be made into all these products. Well, yes, industrial hemp can be made into all those products, but CBD hemp looks just like a THC plant. It's got the big flower, juicy with resin and trichomes and all that other stuff, smell, all of it. It just has no THC,
I see.
Essentially. And so, but that CBD hemp is what took over because of that CBD market. CBD creams, CBD pills, CBD food, CBD. Jesus, man. Jeez, man.
Rub a little CBD oil on it.
I know.
Okay,
And so, yeah, so that's what, it's not an industrial hemp. You can't take CBD hemp and really turn it into a paper product or a pair of shorts. That's industrial hemp that doesn't even have flowers on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting just to hear that story because, this is not the first time that story has been told. This is capitalist America, right? Like here's how the story goes. I mean, this is how the music industry worked too, right? So for example, if you guys remember back in the day, Cash Money, right? The down south record label.
Yeah.
These guys were selling drugs and they wouldn't let you buy any of their drugs if you didn't buy one of their albums. And so these guys went gold, Juvenile and all these guys. Yeah. They went gold right by themselves. Sold 500,000 albums, right?
I noticed that.
They had the record label salivating because no one could do that. Back when I was in that industry, there were people on the Billboard Top 100 where the bottom 10 of the Billboard Top 100, they weren't selling 1,000 albums a month. They were selling nothing.
Yeah.
But they were in the top 100. So it was really, people did not understand how impressive it was to not have any label support selling 500,000 albums. And so same with, what's his name? Ludacris did this too. He was a DJ in Atlanta. And so when the song would get done, he would come in and he would spit a verse on the, on the ride out beat. And people loved him so much, they kept going, Ludacris, you got to do an album, you got to do an album. And then he did the album and he just blew up on his own, no label support. But then what happens, eventually, label comes in, right? There's not a lot of Macklemores in the world. Most people eventually cave for money. And so that's a tale as old as time. You got a good business going. It's going real well. They they Shark Tank you. They're going to come in, they're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. And it's the little fish gets eaten by the bigger fish, gets eaten by the bigger fish. Happens over and over and over and over again. And every time everybody goes, how can we do it different this time? I'm sorry, I might sound a little nihilistic about this, but the reality is there's nothing we can do. We don't have enough lawyers. We don't have billions of dollars. The rich people get to play whatever game they want to play. And all we can do is state, this is my whole takeaway on this. All we can do, they can't ever buy our passion. They can't create fake passion. They can't no one can create a Myco Geeky persona. This is me. There's nobody else like me. There's nobody else like Higher Peaks. There's nobody else, right? If you're really in your own energy and who you are, that's all you got. Yeah. And that's the novelty. That's where you got to operate at. But it's very sad to hear the story of, so we're going to do the CBD game. And then we overreached. What do you know? Everyone got greedy. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. And, there's ramifications that aren't even really talked about. They brought in, the hemp industry in Oregon brought in a type of aphid we had never had here before. And now we're overrun by this type of aphid, which is a hemp aphid, and it's an issue. Also, during that time, a couple types of mold became present that is always there, of course, as you know, but it wasn't as present as it is now. It's become an issue now. Aspergillus has become an issue now out of that mess. And so we've got testing for that now because Aspergillus can have lung issues. Things.
And that had to just be because of these massive crops.
Monoculture.
That are just like old country buffet for Aspergillus.
Yeah.
And so now
aphids.
The load of aphids and Aspergillus. now it just, you gave them enough food for long enough that now they're everywhere and
it's rampant. Yeah. Yeah. It truly is. So there's other things that have happened that have really kind of been a detriment to our ecosystem.
Well, not to mention if you're saying they were buying out pear farms. Well, so obviously they
pear and grapes, man.
They chop the vines down. They chop the pear trees down, right? Those take 20, 30 years minimum to regrow all those things. Yeah. They were doing that in California with almonds. Almonds, because what happened out there, the big outfits, when they ran out of well water, they would just dig deeper wells. So they got 2-mile wells out there. The big, they'll spend $10 million to drill a 2-mile well. And so now they're digging not into the regular water, reserves. They're digging into the deepest aquifers on our earth. And now they're sucking that water out. So all the big outfits, they're like, we got water, we're fine. And all the smaller ones went out of business. And you think those bigger ones bought them out and maintained them? Well, no, they weren't necessarily where they wanted them to be. So they would sometimes buy them out and just let all the trees die.
Yeah.
And so we drive by these huge orchards of just dead almond trees, and you'd be like, oh, that's such a tragedy.
Well, and like with what you say there, like these farms weren't doing living soil too. So you'll get these 10-acre farms, and all you see is row after row after row of just black plastic. And then, next year when they went out of business, they don't clean up those fields. They just bail.
That's whoever buys it next. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I thought, mushrooms can be bad for plastic, but geez, man, when you see these hemp fields, it's absolutely just heartbreaking. But with that said, on the mushroom side, we have, I think, structured it to where we've kept pharmaceutical out of it. Like we're kind of protected in the way we're structuring it because it's going to be for therapeutic. It is for therapeutic use. And there's no connection to pharmaceutical companies. They aren't making the mushrooms. They aren't growing them. They aren't providing them, and we don't need them. So I'm hoping.
Say it again, brother. We don't need them.
We don't need them. And I hope it stays that way because right now we're kind of protected from the pharmaceutical industry with the mushrooms. We've got testing centers, we've got service centers, and we've got cultivators. And so as long as we can keep that route, that it won't keep the big player. There'll still be corporations that come in and can buy a big service center and can start their own cultivation company, but it's not going to be through the pharmaceutical companies, hopefully. So
yeah, we're already seeing a little bit of that. There are people out there spending big money on ad campaigns. I'm not going to name specific names, but whether it's genetics or it's growing containers, what have you, there are people out there, companies spending real big money to get their names out there, and people are buying them, and then they're having bad experiences with some of them, or realizing that they bought a radically overpriced product. And I don't care. I'm not hating on these companies for spending the ad money. The problem is it's rarely the best product who's spending the ad money. It's rarely the best genetics. If it was
just the person with the most money.
Right. Now, if big money guy approached, manna from heaven and said, I'm going to get your genetics out to everybody, I'd just be like, let's do that. Great. I know he's got good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But now there's the other issue, and I've only seen this in construction. It's where you're a one-man crew. You do great work. You make a name for yourself. Somebody's impressed with you, and they give you a chance to, we're do a 400-unit apartment complex. Are you ready to scale up? I'm gonna write you a big check, dude. And they go from one-man crew to 3 to 5-man crew, and that jump, that's a hard jump to make if you've never made that jump. You start making a lot of mistakes. You start making a lot of bad decisions. It's a different game, and you don't know how to play that game. Yeah. And so I see that. I'm even seeing that sometimes with people in the mycology community, where they get a little name for themselves, and then they step up, and now they start making. They're using a different criteria of decision making, and it's usually based in money, because now they've bought more expensive stuff. So they got to pay those off and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just sad. You know, that's that capitalism cycle. It's just how that goes.
It made me back out. I had applied for my cultivator license. I had some ambition to, do some cultivation for the state, but I just, and I kind of knew in the back of my mind that I probably wasn't going to be impressed with, the avenue to getting to be a cultivator, but I just don't think I'm going to do it. I don't want to be involved with the government regulation stuff. I like where I'm sitting right now with the at-home mushroom cultivator, as Myco Geeky puts it.
Yes, I think that's a good
in my
place
pseudo
to be.
lab.
It's a good place to be because you're motivated by all the right things. I'm in the same position. Nobody's invested in my podcast where I have to now answer to them because they're giving me so much money to do this, that, and the other thing. This gets to be about the healing. It gets to be about the practice of cultivating mushrooms. I get to be unencumbered by financial motivating factors. I can just have on whoever I want for the reasons I want. I've had people on, and I've had it's really not been a lot, but people are like, why did you have that person on? And I'm like, because I'm looking big picture at this. You're not. Big picture is there are more newbies than there are experienced cultivators. So I'm going to bring some newbies on the podcast. We're going to talk about what it's like being a newbie. Or I'm going to bring on some very unorthodox dudes that do things that drive most people crazy. But I've seen their flushes, so I know it works. So we're going to talk to those guys too.
You know what? And that's the thing. We shouldn't talk in good or bad because in the mushroom world, anything's possible, man. And I don't know what the right way is.
What's your fruit look like?
Well, right.
What's your
right? But I mean, like,
did you grow a mushroom?
You have so much control over. I've been doing so much experimenting with mine that like you have control over size, density.
Yep.
It's. I mean, I don't know. It's a completely
there's no limit to the FOing you can do.
Right.
There's
so I
really
don't
not.
think that I don't think that that's why the good and bad has been the worst struggle for me as a newbie is trying to get enough information to get going, but not getting torn down along the way. It's so brutal. And unfortunately, there's a lot of very good cultivators that just have cultivated a lot of ego with it as well.
It's like going to, it is overwhelming. It's like going to a cheesecake factory and trying to figure out what you want to eat, right? The menu, have you seen that menu? It's like a novel. There's like, they have every kind of food you can think of. And there's a point where you go, yeah, maybe too many options, man. Like, I'd love it. I want to go to In-N-Out Burger. What do you got? Oh, you got burgers and you got French fries. Do you have anything else? Nope, that's all you got. That I really wish there was a way of messaging to the new growers, very simple, very like, how can we make the number of steps the lowest possible? How can we take every variable out of the equation and just have this sort of really zenned out, simple way of starting? But that's not how it goes. You get on YouTube and the shroomery and you're bombarded with, still to this day, there are times when I'm seeking out answers to questions and I'm like, oh, wow, cool. So there's 19 ways of doing it and everybody says their way's the right way. It's the fundamental conundrum you get into in this hobby is there really are just many ways of going about doing this. And
I'm going to get a lot of flame on this, but the tub guys are passionate, and if you're not doing tubs, it's hard to get liked by a tub guy.
It's true. I mean, so here's all I'll say.
And I'm not
about
being
that.
mean, man. I'm not being mean. Tubs are friggin'
That's
sick.
old school. Tubs are old school.
But man, the push for tub growing is so the will is strong.
Yeah. The tub growers, they're like the Catholics, right? They were the first Christians.
I get it, man. I get it.
Yep.
I get it.
I just did a poll and it was, do you grow in tubs? Do you grow in bags? And it was like 84% tubs, 13% or 14%.
It's because no one wants to say they're doing bags. And then to boot, like I get told, I've been told for a year and a half, you can't grow in a Martha tent. And so that's been the worst one that I've had to deal with. I get shit for doing bags, but I get way more shit for doing a tent. And so I don't recommend them to beginners. Like I would never recommend a Martha tent to a beginner, but it's very doable and it's a fun experimenter to do. You get very squat, dense fruits for the most part, which can be very good bag appeal, very good, single serves. They're not these monstrous sliced apples that you have to make. And I mean, it's just
hard to dice up. Yep.
Right. Well, and I'm not talking bad about any of that. I'm just saying it's just a different method with a different outcome, and it's very doable. You do have to watch your parameters more. So, like, you can't just leave it in the bag. Mm-hmm. You can't just mist your tub. But
yeah.
It's a beautiful sight when my tent's full. Oh my God, man! I can sit there with my coffee in the morning, with my cannabis, and with my little music going, whatever they prefer that morning. I always ask them what they prefer.
That's the great thing.
Turn on some, music for them, and
when you're doing something, seducing them, whatever you're doing. Yeah. The great thing about growing mushrooms is that you can do it however you want to do it. If you're doing it in a way that doesn't work and you're not getting fruit, maybe start listening to some of us who are, giving you advice when you ask for it. But if it's working, or we'll have people on the Discord say, hey, could I do this? And somebody will be like, well, I know a few people have tried that. That didn't work, but do it. We still go, try it. Maybe you'll figure something out that they didn't figure out.
Well, I think a lot of newbies, if you don't allow them to do that, it stifles their want to. It's like what Neil deGrasse Tyson said about kids. When a kid is messing around and breaking something, they're experimenting. They're getting in trouble, but they're playing. They're experimenting in their world, and that's, if you stifle that, then that stifles their ambition to go outside the box. And so that's my only thing is when you're a beginner, you're probably trying shit that a million people have failed on.
You want to play.
But you want to play and you want to find out yourself. And
100%.
I think that should be encouraged, but with all that said, I'm not against any method. I've done Martha tent and I do bags, and I do both right now to do some testing. But ultimately, my next step here is to do tubs, and I want to have all three going congruently, or whatever the word is, but I want to have all three going, not only to get a grasp on all of them, to make myself a more rounded cultivator, but to experiment.
Yeah.
At the same time, experiment with the same genetic across, all three methods. So,
well, I can tell you for a fact that some cultigens will prefer one growing environment over the other.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. There's some that won't even grow in a Martha tent. And then there's some that I don't have very good success in a bag. So that is a big one. I shouldn't say that you can't grow everything in a Martha tent. You can't.
Right.
There's going to be some strains that don't want all that air.
Yep.
And
true.
So.
And you don't know until you FAFO.
That's the thing.
Because most people aren't telling you. I mean, how many times have you seen a post of a flush and they just give you an exhaustive list of growing parameters for it?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
You gotta DM them for that info. What was your ratio? How wet was your, did you nail field capacity? Was it over? How long did the flush take? Who'd you get your genetics from? What was your ambient room temperature and humidity? If we were routinely providing all that information, we could probably start figuring half this stuff out on our own. We wouldn't even need to do the grows. We could go, it seems like Enigma likes this. It seems like Lizard King likes this. Seems like ODPE likes this.
Right.
But we don't share enough of that information, and so we don't know. So hopefully in the future we can do that.
I'm sure you get those DMs though. Every time I post something about a high CO2 or high O2 grow, I get 17 questions about 17 parameters I never took.
Yep.
Which I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start measuring CO2 and such to get a better idea. But I'm just watching them, man.
Here's what I know about CO2. is heavier than air. So it's always going to be sitting on that substrate. And out in the world, right, where mushrooms tend to grow, they're either in thick grasses or they're under a bunch of forest floor debris,
Sure.
Wood, leaves, all that kind of stuff. So they're really forming in an extremely high CO2 environment. And
Absolutely.
that CO2 environment, we know for a fact, triggers pinning, triggers primordia formation. Can you go straight to fruiting conditions? You definitely can, because you got a tub full of nothing but that one single genetic. It's got nothing to compete with itself. As the evaporation process begins, that evaporation process will ultimately trigger pinning.
Yeah.
Does waiting and choking them out for a little bit until you fully colonized your cake make a difference? For some varieties, I think it makes a big difference. For some, it doesn't make a difference. So, but until you pick a cultigen and start playing with it and experimenting in those ways, you won't know for that cultigen what it's going to do, how it matters, how it affects fruit size, shape, yield, all that kind of stuff. You just don't know until you FAFO.
Yeah. I will tell you this, as far as the 10, you have to choke them out at least long enough to get them to colonize. You don't have to see pinning, but you have to get it colonized. Otherwise, if you don't, it's just you
can
really
evaporate
can't do
too
it.
fast.
Yeah, that's the thing. But it's fun. I just got done with a run of Pearly Gates, and I did a run, both of them 2-to-1 cake, and then I did high CO2 and high oxygen, and completely different, man. It's crazy.
Completely different. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I got these tall, big fruits, and then these just dense, small. It's weird.
So I'm assuming you got the tall fruits in the high CO2.
Yeah. Here, can I show them to you real quick?
Yeah, show them.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see them through the bag, but can you see how?
Yeah.
They got tall.
Yeah, they got tall. Those are tall.
Look how big that guy got.
Yep. And then now let's see your high oxygen.
And I can cut these up. These were actually needing to be cut open. And so this is the one that's been open in the tent.
There it is right there. Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
See how small and dense they got?
Yep.
I mean, they're just.
Which honestly, those will dry nice. I mean,
well, they're little servings for sure.
Yeah. You just gotta, you have to know what you're trying to get out of your fruit. There might be people that go, I want that second bag.
Like but like that one, I don't know. That becomes so big that
right.
People might want to break that up.
It's a good picture. Mm-hmm. I think
so much.
Honestly, I'm probably second bag guy, but if I want to take a picture on Instagram, I'm first bag guy. So yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, those.
I'm going to put them side by side and take a picture and just let people argue about it.
Yeah, do a poll. see who likes what. But at the end of the day, I mean, weigh out that yield. See if
I was going to say, which one do you think? And I'm going to do a contest, I think, and I'm going to ask people to guess the dry weight of both of them to see which one they think is actually.
My guess is it's within 10% if you use the exact same quantity of spawn.
Yeah, I did. I used 2 pounds of sub and 1 of spawn.
I think you're real close.
So
just like everybody talks about, well, tubs have bigger yield. Yeah, bigger first yield. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, there's the same biomass in there. And if you continue the fruiting process, what you didn't get in the first flush, I get really good second flushes in my bags. My second flushes in bags are definitely better than in tubs. Because at the end of the day, if you know science, there's just bioavailability in there, right? Like there's the same amount of grain. If you put the same amount of grain and sub in a bag or a tub, you put the same ingredients in there. You get the same number of cookies, kids. Like, it's just, when do you get them? How many batches? How many?
Well, I found the second flushes in the bags are quicker.
Oh yeah.
So my second flush will come. I got to be careful sometimes. I'll walk up, go to my lab after a couple of days and be like, oh shoot, I should have checked yesterday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
On the second flush, it's like, whoa, I don't know what it is about keeping them in that bag, but man, they just flush out. Now the stuff in the tent takes longer. I've gotten 4th and 5th flushes in a tent without any kind of contamination, but just those you have to actually rehydrate. You don't have to rehydrate a second flush. So
yeah, I mean, that's really, as you get into being an intermediate grower, and this is the case for like the art of bonsai. There's a lot of things where this is what it's all about. Beginners don't understand watering. This applies to gardening basics too, right? Watering, beginners always overwater or underwater. Knowing that moisture content and understanding that evaporative process in the climate you're trying to create is really like that intermediate step of growing. And in tubs, I mean, guys, when I see guys like James Cruz post pictures of his Gates genetics in his tubs, he opens that tub up and the walls are just dripping wet.
Yeah.
And he's got banging flushes because he has the perfect environment in that tub.
Yeah.
So whatever he's doing is creating a perfect environment. That environment is, in my opinion, easier to more consistently reproduce, especially for newer growers in bags.
Yeah.
I love bags for those reasons.
I do.
It's a more humid environment. It's just more likely to work out for you.
It is. And you have a certain amount of control to it. If it's, you have control over that. A lot of tubs, you're cutting holes and those holes are permanent and you got to tape them, untape them. But yeah, you're right. For me, when I'm working with someone that's new at it, I always start with the bags just because it's easier to break down the process for them. And honestly, it's hard to contaminate a bag unless you just.
And you can really, worst case scenario, you can spawn to bulk. You can fold it over and chip clip it like you did, or tape it, whatever, and you can absolutely neglect tech that bag.
I know.
You'll get fruit.
Yeah.
You will get fruit. There are things you could do in the process, introduce a little air here and there, cut a slit. But if you don't do any of those things, leave it the fuck alone. You will get some fruit. And so, for that reason, now, a very close second for me is just the 6-quart shoe boxes. Just dub tub tech on the 6-quart shoe boxes. A lot of things about that, especially if you use the right amount and you fill that bottom container up, at least 2.5, 3 inches. You got a lot of moist sub in there. You got your lid on. If you don't mess with that thing until it's fully colonized, flip the lid. Wait for pin set, primordial formation. Once you got that and you got pins popping, put the dub tub on. It's also pretty foolproof.
Sure,
But you do run a little bit more contamination risk depending upon where you're fruiting at. Again, bags.
Yeah.
It's self-contained. Nothing's getting in or out of that thing other than a little bit of air. It's all good.
And when you nail them in bags, I mean, you can have those flushes coming just out the sides. I mean, you can get, I'd often wonder how much, if you can get the same amount of fruit out of bags as you can out of tubs side by side. I would like to see actual real info on
So we've had people do anecdotal testing on that, and it seems like the tubs are higher yielders by about 10 to sometimes 15%. But
per square foot or per square inch, say?
Yes, factoring that in. But you're not factoring in the fact that they flush differently. A tub will tend to have a slightly bigger first flush for whatever reason. Probably has to do with the climate, the environment in there, the fresh air, whatever. Overall, I know most people that spent years or decades growing in tubs and now grow in bags feel that it's a little bit less based, because these guys are also usually not going 4th, 5th, 6th flush in bags.
Yeah.
They're doing 1, maybe 2, and then tossing.
Yeah. Right.
And most people that I've talked to say, it's not that much different. Like, it's a little bit less. The only thing I miss growing in bags is just the pretty canopy, and that the fruits tend to have less vermiculite stuck to their stipes. That's about the only difference. But you let it dry, most of it falls off. It's all
little
good.
Paintbrush.
It's not a big deal. So
the only tubs I've ever done are cordyceps, and that's it.
Oh, well, you're up on me. I have not done that yet. I'm still struggling. USA cordyceps, William Padilla Brown. Can't get none of these guys to come on and talk about cordyceps. I had Gary Fresh from the Farm Fungi come on, talk a little bit about it. Yeah, man. Nobody wants to tell how they're growing cordyceps.
Really? It's not that hard. It's not that
It's good money, man. Good money.
Oh, I see. Well, it's just more about temp and time, man. But the spawn itself is so friggin' quick, bro.
Is it?
You can spawn out a quart LC jar in 3 or 4 days.
Oh, no way.
Oh yeah, just fast. So
right
fast,
now,
you almost have to keep using it.
Oh, really?
Like I'll take like
That's
a tub.
why they
I'll take
all
a big.
have like massive grows of this stuff. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean the LC spawns out so quick, you can't even really do auger plates because within a couple days, the whole plate's just covered. So like I just use big syringes and I'll lay out the tub like you would any kind of tub, and then just syringe that thing real good, and then cover it up, man. Just keep it under 68.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll do it one day. I'm in the middle of growing Zapticorum right now, pans. So I'm pans and zaps and subtrops.
I heard those are hard, man.
Got to adjust over my tent, for a little bit more humid environment. And I do not have the space yet for 2 tents. I'd love to have 2, 5x5s or 4x8s and have, one cube tent and then one high humidity tent. But right now I have to pick and choose. I got to kind of cycle through those. So that's what we're doing right now over at the Geeky Homestead, trying to grow some exotics.
That's the next wave. That's what everybody's doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right. Got to catch them all. Still playing the gotta catch them all game.
I just got done with the Natalensis one. Man, that's like a Medusa, man. It's a mess. I got like 3-4 flushes out of it real easy though.
Now, have you tried them yet?
No.
Oh.
Special occasion.
Get ready.
Those are for me. I haven't tried them, but yeah, I mean, I loved growing them. Kind of a pain to deal with, to do the flush and everything, and they dry up into little nothings, but
yeah. Yeah, especially if you get real stringy ones. I got mine look more like rapidly, tapered stipes with like just a little tiny cap on it. But I've seen a lot of the grows where it's like a lot more like spaghetti. Mine did not look quite like that. I've only grown them 2 tubs of them. I just grew them to get some spores and move on. But yeah, they are potent. I can tell you that.
They're not heavy. So I wouldn't recommend them if you're looking for volume and weight.
No, they're not.
Yeah, those are special occasion.
Man, honestly, these days, I don't know. I've said it a million times. I love ODPE. I love any of the short, squatty little fruits, fat, dense, not hollow stipes. Yeah, anything like that. Or like garlic max are nice. Yeah,
the LBMRs. The blue magnolia rusts. If you do those in a Martha tent, they come out real dense. I mean, hard, just like rocks and little 1 grammers, man. I love them that way. Real good one to do in a tent.
So many fun ones. But yeah, as I've gone along, I really like things that dry hard, so that they don't lose their shape. I can shrink wrap them, like I can vacuum seal them. They don't crumble up. Yeah, that's my problem with Melmac. That's my problem with any of the basic cubes. Is those are automatically going to be the microdoses because there's no pretty factor for those in the bags.
No, no, absolutely not.
All right, man. Well, I know my wife's about to tell me it's time to go to bed here.
Yeah.
This was fun. We'll have to do it again. I definitely enjoy talking to you. I definitely enjoy good audio quality, as I'm imagining everybody else will appreciate that.
I hope so.
I think, just having another podcaster, this was really nice. Just so everybody knows, Higher Peaks has been real nice to me. He's given me some good advice. He convinced me to spend a bunch of money on some audio stuff that has improved. It has improved the quality of the podcast. I've had many people comment, so that's all a credit to him. He's been doing this longer than me, so he knows more of the tricks. So I really appreciate you for that. I look forward to having you back on and continue, talking about this evolution, this event. I really feel like we are a part of an event in human history that psilocybin and medical cannabis and just in general entheogens are, I think, going to potentially be like a pivotal moment in history where people try to reclaim some right, just like
We
really,
got too disconnected.
I can't own a plant. Come on, man. Who
Yeah.
how did this happen? I can't grow
Yeah, we
a
got too
cactus. I can't grow
disconnected.
mushrooms. Give me a break, guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
got way too
outlawed mother.
disconnected.
We've outlawed Mother Nature, man.
Yeah.
Too disconnected. I think that's the healing part, man, is once we get back to nature, man.
Yep.
That'll be the
The
factor.
secret. Yeah.
Yeah.
Less
right, brother.
less man-made artificial reality and more real reality. Definitely wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, without all the propaganda, right?
All right, man. Well, so
All right, brother.
guys, if you have not watched Higher Peaks podcast, it's Oregon Rooted.
Mhm.
Literally
That
just
simple.
Google Oregon Rooted podcast.
Everything.
You
Yeah.
will find it. He's on every platform there is. He's on Instagram. He's everywhere.
Mhm.
You can find him. It's a really great podcast. So I get people asking me all the time, all right, I've watched every one of your episodes, sometimes multiple times. What do I listen to next? So I always say, well, you got to check out Oregon Rooted. There's like a handful of others, but yeah, it's a great podcast, man. Lots to listen to, especially if you also, have a soft spot in your heart for cannabis. You're going to have a good time.
Well, and just so everybody knows that's listening to this, you were 97 and 98. So if you check out episode
Ooh.
97 and episode 98, and that's my interview with you,
Yep.
which I've had great response from. So it must have been a good one.
Great.
So I encourage you, if you do come over and want to listen, just pick up the Myco Geeky podcast, 97 and 98.
I won't be mad if you start with the one I was on.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
there you go.
That's a good
All right,
that's a good easing into it for sure.
It is.
And so you're
yeah.
coming up on 100. That's cool. I'm coming up on 50. So and you've put in minor cheating a little bit. So I know the work you've put into yours. So that's commendable. And the longevity. It takes work. You definitely got to figure out what works long term. It's like picking a diet, right? Like, cool, you can starve yourself for 2 weeks, but what can you do for the rest of your life? So
Yes. Pace yourself. I don't know how you do it. I don't have ADHD, but I'm starting to wonder if I should.
I mean, there are ways
because you
it's a
operate real well.
superpower. There are ways it's good, and there are ways it's bad. We could
Yeah.
talk about this someday.
Next time.
Yep. All right, man. Well, thank you
All
so
right, brother.
much. Really appreciate you taking some time. We'll talk to you
Yep.
later.
Thank you, sir.
All right, see ya. All right, guys. Higher Peaks of Oregon Rooted podcast. Check them out. Of course, like he said, I'd love it if you checked out the one I did. We talk a lot about it's about me, why I'm doing what I'm doing. We talk a little bit about I like to talk about healthcare a little bit. We did that a fair amount. But he's got a lot of interesting podcasts. Definitely in the 100 episodes, a lot of cannabis stuff. But as time's gone on, he's doing more and more mushroom-oriented stuff. He is a very enthusiastic mushroom cultivator, so right up my alley. Check him out. Also, by the way, we didn't talk about this, but he has a hilarious Instagram. He does a lot of great. I would put him in my top 5 for funny mushroom Instagram accounts. So check him out on Instagram as well. All the links for him will be in the description below. And until next week, hope you guys have some great flushes. Have fun. Like Higher Peaks said, right? Play around, FAFO, have fun with this. There's a lot of therapy to be had in the cultivation aspects of this. So until next week, take care, guys.